Sean.
Hi, thanks for that, Rob. I don't come from a family of 12 and I don't have 12 children. I have a 12-year-old daughter. And a few pints of Guinness and you might get Danny Boy out of me, but maybe that's for that's for later tonight. Look, thanks very much for being here. I've been here yesterday as well as today, and I think it's been a very insightful but also inspiring event. So I'm really pleased to be able to be here and speak. I think one of the interesting things is, CSIRO and CSR, how do they fit together? And I guess from the research perspective, what we're seeing is this challenge. And the challenge really is that out there in Australian communities, there are some challenges that are quite complex. And when you think about how you respond to a changing climate, to addressing things like social and economic disadvantage, environmental degradation, shifting populations, rural decline, gangbuster growth on the coast, there is complexity in all of these challenges. And at the heart of that complexity, it's around three fundamental factors. It's about what's happening economically, it's what's happening environmentally, and what's happening socially. And it's the interrelationships and interconnections between those things that actually make, understanding these challenges complex and then seeking solutions complex as well. And I think one of the reflections we'd have is that, in trying to respond to these challenges, there's no one sector, no one organisation, no one government has got the responsibility or even in fact the capability to do something that's really going to make a significant difference. But what we do see is lots of people and lots of different organisations doing things. And so I think one of the issues of the complexity is that it compels us to think a bit differently how we respond. And potentially the solutions lie in trying to integrate what everybody is doing, perhaps individually, and trying to draw together the resources, the skills, the knowledge and the passion from different places and bring it together and harness it to focus on addressing some of these challenges. Now, that's really easy to say, but the real challenge is, well, how do you do it? And I guess the purpose of this presentation is to present to you, here's how CSIRO is looking at how we might try to learn how we respond to these complex challenges. So just by way of, some of the research that we've been doing, over the when people think of CSIRO, it's interesting what types of images or thoughts that it evokes. But quite often we're seen as focusing on the physical sciences. We do look at the specific industrial applications. We kill rabbits through myxomatosis and calicivirus and these types of things. And often it's been seen that we've had a very narrow disciplinary focus. But when we start talking about the complexity of the systems that we're dealing with, and also having to respond from our core business, which is around research, you actually need to start thinking systemically, embracing this complexity. And so quite often what we've been compelled to do in the way we operate is actually start to integrate the sciences. And I think Michael Keeley, when he talked about a pixel is not a picture, I think that's a great analogy for how science traditionally focuses on specific disciplines. And you get very caught up in that, understanding a part of the system. But the real game now is how do you understand the interrelationships within that system? And then from that understanding, what do you do differently? So in terms of the research over the last 10 years, CSIRO has been out there working with communities in a very participatory way, which again is a challenge from a research perspective. It's not one of the key modes that research was traditionally done in. And through that research, it's really been working with those communities to help them to better understand the interrelationships across the biophysical, the social and the economic systems, and through that understanding, support them to make better informed decisions about dealing with change, about responding to changing climate and things like that. I guess when we kind of break it down, what's the elements of this? It's trying to support those communities, explore how you manage resources sustainably. How do you deal with competing interests and multiple uses and benefits? How do you understand the things systemically? And then how do you support them to deal with the uncertainty and the risk that comes with this discontinuous change that we've been hearing about? And then I guess fundamentally, if you're looking at capacity building, it's how do you learn from that process? How do you build capacity? And as I said, this was going on for about 10 years. I joined about 5 years ago, and it was early 2005. We kind of stopped and drew breath and thought, what have we learnt from this experience? We've delivered, 24 or so projects. Let's sit down and try to draw out some lessons from us as researchers, but also to help inform where to next. And one of the things we cottoned on to was, science has got a role to play here in this space, and we've been able to work with some specific communities and deliver some outcomes for them. But we're just part of the solution. There are other players out there that have got knowledge and competency and resources that, if we could try to start to pull all that together and harness it, then here's a real opportunity. And so we started talking to different companies in the private sector, people in government, people in NGOs, and just started to share. This is what we've been doing. This is what we're learning. Hey, what are you guys doing? What have you been learning? Where are you heading? And after about a year of workshopping and chatting and things like that, we ended up with this initiative. And basically, it's the Sustainable Communities Initiative is, as it says, a multi-stakeholder partnership. So basically, we're drawing together players from across different sectors. And the intention is to work in partnership with specific communities around the country, where we will develop and deliver in partnership with them what we'd consider to be integrated and innovative and knowledge-based solutions, responding to their specific sustainability challenges and opportunities. So it's about harnessing the passion, the resources, the knowledge, the competencies of a whole range of players, and bringing that to the communities and working with those communities to respond to these challenges. And it's really it's bottom up, because the communities determine what it is that they want to work on. Through that process, we'll deliver these projects, and in working with the communities, the intention is to deliver outcomes across the triple bottom line into those communities. But through a portfolio of the projects we deliver, be able to get some meta-level learnings that will help inform, create insights and knowledge and learning that will help inform future policy and programs and practice. And so be able to take that information and share it with other communities, share it with other businesses, share it with policymakers. This is an action learning program. It runs for a 3-year period. It's only just kicked off, so we'll run up until the end of 2009. The governance is via advisory committee. We have an independent chair, Liam Ford, who was the CEO of Balderstone Hornibrook until he retired last year. CSIRO is hosting this, and each of the partners are contributing in-kind resources, significant in-kind resources, and the corporate partners and some of the government partners are providing some operating costs. The actual projects that we deliver are funded not only by in-kind and some cash resources from the partners, but significantly from existing government programs, both state and federal government programs. And to date, we've been able to attract 15 partners to work with CSIRO in this initiative. And I think when I always look at this, I go, wow, how did we do that? What's really kind of interesting for me is that we've got significant diversity. And I think when you're talking about innovation, what you need is that diversity. You need people coming from different perspectives who can think differently and bring their unique perspective to the table and have that shared in a very equal way. I think when you look at the private sector partners, it's interesting, listening to the example we just had around Quicksilver and some of the other examples we've heard over the last day or so. This is about strategy. This is basically fundamentally what is the bit that I can contribute that not only makes good business sense but also has an outcome into the community. I always put this up when I talk to people about this. This is my reflections about why we've been able to bring together this diverse group of people. And I think firstly, fundamentally, this whole sustainability, sustainable development, it all comes down to values. So the whole notion of sustainability speaks very personally to people about values. What is it that, there is a symbiotic relationship, if you like, between an individual and the environment, about respect for other people, about intergenerational equity. They're very personal things. But those values are not only carried in people's hearts. There are some organisations, public, private sector, and also in the NGOs, that those values become the core values of their organisation, their cultural beliefs. But hot on the heels of that values is value creation. So there's an opportunity cost for everything that we do. In order to actually, do this instead of that, we have to be ensuring that we're creating value. And when it comes to the corporate partners, what I've noticed is it's really interesting about how they perceive creating value. And quite often you would think, your mind just defaults to, it's got to be a dollar thing. But actually, I think the examples we've been seeing today and yesterday is it's not about the money. It's actually about attracting and retaining people. It's about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's those types of things of how they're creating value. The other thing I'd say is that if you look at what is it the companies want to bring, it's people and skills that's associated with their strategy. This is not, we want to give you a check and have our brand next to your brand. What they're saying is they actually want to be involved in what we're doing. They want to have their people meaningfully involved, applying their unique skills and competencies. And then we can talk about, the whole initiative is to be innovative. It's about exploring alternatives, not replicating or doing what other people do. And if you're operating in that model, it's about a learning journey. And if you're doing this, and it is about learning, there's another fundamental element here is around leadership. And so when we look at the players that we're pulling together, we're actually seeing the people that are willing to stand up and say, we want to do something differently, where there's uncertainty, there's ambiguity, there's risk because it's innovative, but we want to press through and show some leadership here. And then fundamentally it's about action and outcomes, because we can all talk about this stuff all we like, but we've actually got to deliver something. So just in regards to where we're at with projects, we actually have in our pipeline about a dozen or so project opportunities. I won't go into detail in any of these, but I just thought I'd give you some feeling for the diversity that we're looking at. So, we're working basically nearly in every state and territory. The issues are across, no surprises, water, energy, how do you manage strategically in times of great change. And what's interesting is some projects that have been emerging in Indigenous communities. So I think that's potentially there is an opportunity here to start rethinking the way we might work with those communities. And I guess what we've created here is an opportunity to learn how we might do that. So just in summary, because I've been given the wind-up, I'll just go back to the original tenet that some of these challenges that we're facing are inherently complex, and we do need to innovate to develop new ways to find solutions to them. But also, within those challenges, there are significant opportunities. And that's, I think, what I'd like to be focusing on is the opportunity in there, rather than, I think it was the Al Gore movie where he said, quite often we go from, here's the problem, straight into despair, without actually thinking about the bit in the middle as well, what are we going to do about it? I think, just again, listening to some of the comments over the last day or so, one of the blogs talked about we needed to build links outside of our own industry. And I think Margot said yesterday, it's a time in our history where we have to work together. I mean, the whole premise of the Sustainable Communities Initiative is actually the vehicle to learn how to do that. How do we actually work together to address these complex challenges and to realise the opportunities that are inherent within them? So, and I guess the thing to note here for this audience is that the private sector has a crucial role to play in this space. And because they do bring with them a unique set of competencies and skills and resources that are all part of the solution. And I think I'd just leave you with two thoughts. The first one, I guess, is when you start to see things systemically and think systemically, and Margot Cairns would call it that kind of integral thinking, you actually just realise that everything is connected. We're all connected to each other, we're all connected to the earth and all those types of things. And then it's not another step just to say, well, then we're all in this together. So you have that kind of systems thinking, that systems understanding, but even if you're starting to think differently, that's only part of the way. Because what you're thinking is one thing, but what you're doing has to be also the other part. And I guess what I'd put out to people out here is that it's our actions that speak louder than words. We'll be judged by what we do and not what we say. And I guess what we've tried to do by creating this initiative, this vehicle, is actually give people the opportunity to work together to explore how to do things differently. And one of the key strengths of the initiative is diversity, and so we're always open to new partners, new project opportunities. So my email address is there, and I'll be around this afternoon, so I'll be more than happy to hear if people are interested in knowing more and seeing if there are opportunities for us to work together. So thank you very much. I'll take a few questions if there's any questions out there.
from One at a Time
Hi, Amanda.
Foundation. Hi, I'm just fascinated that Australia's premier scientific organisation would have a statement that it all comes down to values. I know you're a bunch of hard-nosed scientists. I think that's a kind of a wonderful point to have got to. My question's around working with communities, the way that, I guess, where does the inspiration come from to get to the point where they say, we've got to make these changes, and getting involved with you and your partners?
The inspiration comes from within the communities, undoubtedly. It's interesting that we often, well, in fact, nearly always work with existing governance institutions in communities. So it's the local government or regional organisations of councils or area consultative committees. These kind of formalised institutions, but and they're seen as the leaders, the formal leaders. But I think quite often it's the informal leaders in communities. It's the people that don't have these formal titles or stations, but they more often than not are the key drivers. They're the ones really pushing this. So, I mean, I guess that would be my response.
I've got a question. It's prompted. I've just gotten off the phone from a journalist at one of the papers here in Sydney, and his comment to me was, isn't CSR just the new version of marketing? Isn't it just a marketing advantage? As somebody who doesn't come from a corporation, how do you see, and clearly the examples you've just put up there is a beautiful triptych. You've got community, you've got non-corporate, and you've got corporate. How does that work? Why do you believe Westpac's involved with you in those projects?
That's a good question. I'll tell you why I went to Westpac. We went out there initially when we're thinking who we're going to talk to, about sharing our story of what we've learned. And I went to corporate, Reputex, Corporate, CRI index, and thought let's see who people rate as the leaders in each of their sectors and go and have a chat with them. And so when I went and spoke to Westpac, I said, here, this is what we're thinking. We're not really sure what it looks like, but would you be interested in participating, in having conversations? And it's taken us 2 years of conversation to get to the starting line, but Westpac have been there pretty well all those 2 years. So, when you ask Westpac what they get out of their corporate social responsibility initiatives, they will tell you the number one thing that they've gotten out of it is they're working in a constrained labour market, and what they are able to do is attract, develop and retain people. That's what they say. But don't let me be the spokesman for them. But I believe, and the thing is, they've got track record. I mean, they've had a 6-year relationship with the Indigenous Enterprise Partnership in Cape York. They send, I think it's 40 people up there every year for 2 weeks. And that's a great way to actually provide a life-changing experience for their people, to develop them into better people. But it actually has them applying their specific skills and resources in financial literacy training and things like that into an environment that could need some assistance. So that's aligned to their strategy, but they also see the benefit for their people.
Can I just ask, when talking about values and that type of thing, is it like, sometimes I like to see it a bit stronger, like it's not just values, it's also a responsibility. It's the responsibility from a mature company to model for younger companies coming up, like all of us are, adults in the community, and it's our responsibility to model for younger people and generations coming up. Do those type of conversations take place?
Look, I can't say they have, but I guess the comment I'd make is that this is a journey. There is no roadmap, there is no blueprint. We're all having to do things differently, and we're all learning how to do it. And people come onto this journey at different points in time. I guess this initiative is around about going out there and experiencing working together and kind of realising some outcomes for communities, but fundamentally from that experience draw some lessons and learnings that then we can go and share with others. And I think that's where it starts picking up, is how do you share this with other people, other companies, other communities. Yeah.
Just in terms of when you were seeking support from the corporate world for your initiatives, I sort of have the view that it doesn't necessarily matter what the intention of the corporate world is when they support a community group, but I believe that exposure to the programs of the community group can change them for the positive in a really lasting way. Were those thoughts that went, like, did you have discussions around that, in that you knew that what you were doing would be very positive and it didn't matter why somebody was getting on board because you knew the outcomes would benefit many people?
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it didn't matter why somebody came on board, but what I'd certainly say is it's, this is innovation and you never know what might happen. And I think the example of the crossing, I think, was a fantastic example of, hey, we know we've got an idea here, we think it's going to be a good idea and we need to keep pushing towards it and build some momentum, but we're not really sure what that's going to look like at the end of the journey. But, we're pretty confident that this is true north and we should be heading that way, and so let's just press on and see what comes out of it. I don't know if that answered the question, but I guess that's...
Is there even a benefit in community groups chasing corporate support from groups who haven't necessarily shown a lot of interest in these initiatives to get more corporations over the line, so to speak, in achieving some sort of benchmark level of caring about the community? Is that a responsibility of the community sector?
I think it works both ways. I think, interestingly enough, what I've seen is, a maturity, a sophistication, if you like, in the way companies are approaching this. And I think what you'll see is a kind of a fast following from the community sector around, if they're being more selective, if they're really aligning what they're doing as part of strategy rather than just philanthropy, then we need to start thinking about what is it that we're doing that's aligned to those strategies. How can we actually create an opportunity to create value for that company, but also a mutual benefit back to us and our beneficiaries?
Please
Thank you very much.
Continue the conversation over tea. I can see there are probably more questions.